Sign it and make this easy, Dad, Kyle said, his smile thin as a freshly honed blade. We had just come back from Caroline's funeral, yet the inheritance meeting was already underway in the probate attorney's office. The quitclaim assignment packet slid to my hand, the rasp of paper like an order. I didn't sign. I looked at my daughter, Emma, trying to hide the tremor in her hands, then met Kyle's eyes. He thought grief made me weak. He didn't know Caroline's final gift was a cedar box and a note that read, "Use science." My attorney was about to walk in with a red-sealed DNA envelope, something that could flip the entire room with a few lines of conclusion. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. I sat on the long bench by the window, my back pressed to a thin blade of Savannah afternoon sun. On the table, a manila folder labeled Inheritance Meeting lay square, and the attorney's fountain pen rested across it like a small fence. My son-in-law, Kyle Morton, slid a stack of papers toward me, his smile thin as a freshly honed blade. "Sign it and make this easy, Dad," he said. "Quitclaim assignment. Put the house and cabin in the hands of someone who knows how to manage." He said manage, as if greed were a soft skill. I knew what he wanted. Ever since his wedding to my daughter, he'd been dropping hints to her about the inheritance. I didn't touch the papers. I looked over at David Chen, our family's longtime lawyer, then at my daughter, Emma, hands clenched so hard her knuckles blanched. "Everything goes through counsel," I said, low and even, "and it all goes in the minutes, line by line." Kyle lifted one corner of his mouth. That smile had softened plenty of spines before. Not today. After the funeral, the house was so quiet it hurt. I dreaded stepping into Caroline's study, but that afternoon I pushed the door open and breathed in old books and lavender. I only meant to dust. When I tugged a shelf drawer, I saw a slim gap beneath the desk. Under a lifted board lay a cedar box, its brass hook latch tarnished dark. I lifted it, hearing the soft knock of wood on wood, like a breath. Inside sat a cream envelope sealed with wax, Caroline's slanted hand on the front. "To Tom." I sank into her armchair and opened it with the old paper knife. The first line pulled my heart straight down. "If you're reading this, I'm gone, and I'm laying a secret on you that's too heavy to carry alone." She wrote of a delivery room long ago, of losing a child, of a wild, grief-blind decision, of the possibility of a switched birth record. "Don't protect me, Tom," Caroline wrote. "Protect the truth. Use science. Science favors no one and fears no one." I set the letter down. The room tilted like a boat easing off the dock. In that sway, her meaning held steady. Find the truth by evidence and by process. The next morning I went to David's office. His worn leather briefcase sat beside a half-drunk coffee. I handed him the letter. He read slowly, looked up, and gave the slightest nod. "We won't argue with word," he said. "We'll seek a court order, have the hospital retrieve any archived tissue from years ago, and run a DNA comparison with full chain of custody. In parallel, I'll hire a PI using the leads in the letter. Date, hospital, description of a young mother." He pulled a stack of forms, flagging the signature lines. "If anyone objects, let them object in writing. Paper speaks the language of the law better than people speak the language of argument." I signed without a tremor, not because I was brave, but because I wouldn't betray what she asked. I spent an afternoon at the community wood shop Caroline had funded. New wood and carpenter's glue hung heavy in the air. Bright lengths of pine were lined up in rows. A problem had flared. A shipment of plywood arrived off spec. The crew and supplier were snapping at each other. A young woman, Beth Carter, rolled out the drawings on the bench, voice steady. She didn't assign blame. She pointed to specs, matched them to the purchase order, then proposed swapping in a different lot and patching the schedule so the job wouldn't die. When tempers cooled, she turned to one of the men. "How's your daughter, Uncle Mike?" she asked, remembering a small detail about the very person she'd just argued with. I stood there and saw the way I used to work. Fix at the root, don't pour oil on a fire. I didn't know why watching Beth warmed my chest. Maybe because in her, I saw what Caroline called a living legacy. That night, Kyle texted Emma, words sweet as sugar and sharp as salt. Just sign, babe. Your dad's tired. Don't drag this out. I need things in my name to handle them quickly. The phone buzzed in pulses. Emma opened and locked it again, watching the three dots of typing like a whip. She typed two words and erased them, sent sorry without knowing what she'd done wrong. Her shoulders collapsed. The hand holding the phone shook. Her thumb touched the screen, then jerked back as if from a burn. I'm doing what's best for you. The next message popped up, along with an audio clip. Kyle's voice half coaxing, half pouting, threading into her ear with little if-then conditionals. I listened to the phone hum and watched Emma hold it the way you hold a knife. I set a notebook beside her and flipped it to a log page. Record everything, I said. Date, time, content. Don't miss a thing. Emma looked down and nodded. Her breasts were shallow, her cheeks tight and dry as she swallowed back tears. For years, my daughter had been used to other people's voices. Today, I wanted her to hear the small sounds that keep you from slipping. The rasp of paper, the clack of a receipt stamp, the thunk of a notary seal. A week later, David called from the hospital. A paraffin block from Emma's childhood surgery had been preserved. The chart number matched. The court order was in. The lab received my sample and logged a complete chain of custody. The evidence bag wore a red seal. Each open and close would carry signatures. The PI also reported a diary entry from a woman in the suburbs. Matching date, matching description. The fragments from Caroline's letter began to lock together. I thought I would crumble. Instead, I drew a deeper breath. When truth stands up, there's no need to shout. Kyle asked to meet at a cafe near the courthouse. He spoke low, all counterfeit warmth. Just sign one assignment, Dad. It'll ease her stress. I'll handle the cash. You can rest. I looked at the court receipt in my leather folio, then at the young man acting the part of family. No deals outside process, I said. If you have a proposal, submit it in writing to my attorney. Kyle's smile flickered for a split second, like a light with a bad contact. I stood. The chair scraped the floor. One dry sound. Some sounds seem ordinary but mark the line between two lives. Envelope day. David's conference room was lit just so, the blinds drawn halfway. Water glasses, napkins, a box of tissues. He always plans for the human side of procedure. Emma sat on my left, fingers locked, nails biting half moons into skin. Kyle lounged opposite, trying to look at ease. Beth had come at David's request, uneasy, hugging a tube of drawings. David set his briefcase on the table. The latches snapped, click-clack, clean as a hammer. He took out a lab envelope with a red strip seal, read out the case number, the signature chain, the technician's name, the transfer times. Paper linked to paper like a bridge. If one rivet fails, the bridge falls. He scanned to the conclusion. His voice was neither high nor low. Comparing genetic markers from sample A, Tom Reed, and sample B, Emma Reed, the probability of a parent-child relationship is 0.0%. The room lurched like a boat hit broadside. No one spoke. I heard my own breath pick up, the hush of tissues pulled from a box, the faint rasp in Emma's throat. Kyle shot upright, eyes cutting from me to David to the envelope. Fake, he blurted. These labs. David raised a hand. The seals, the order, and the chain of custody are in front of you, he said slowly. If you wish to contest, do so in writing, also within the chain. He shifted to the clause Caroline had asked him to draft years ago. Language as calm as a center line on asphalt. All assets pass to my husband, Tom Reed, and or to the direct heir of my bloodline when identified by valid scientific proof. He set his glasses down and looked at us one by one. This excludes non-blood relations, regardless of legal relation. I heard Kyle swallow. He started to speak, but David continued. Additionally, pursuant to Mrs. Caroline's letter and corroborating investigative records, We have identified Mr. Tom Reed's biological child. He turned toward the door. Beth rose on reflex, pressing the drawing tube to her chest. I saw again her shy smile in the woodshop, the way she nodded to an elder, the way she stooped to pick up a fallen screw to keep the schedule alive. Strangely, there was no thunder in me, only a small, quiet, oh, like a seed cracking open. Emma began to cry, not loud but heavy as a steady rain. I reached toward her shoulder, then stopped. Some pain a person must cross on their own. Kyle didn't cry. His face drew tight like a fist. "You're pushing my wife over the edge," he hissed. "Old man, you're tearing this family apart." David didn't argue. He slid out a blue folder with prepared letters. "Consequences," he said. "First, Kyle Morton is excluded from any benefit as a non-blood relation. Second, for Emma Reed, a modest monthly stipend disbursed by month, conditioned on attending boundary counseling and completing a personal finance course. Third, a no-contact letter between Kyle and Mr. Tom, and a soft no trespass notice covering the townhome, cabin, and office." He placed a pen on the table. "If you accept, sign here. If not, we'll see each other in court, where only documents will speak." I stood slowly, the chair sliding back just an inch. I didn't look at Kyle. I looked at Beth. She edged back half a step, as if afraid of taking up space. "I'm Tom," I said. "Caroline used to call me too cautious. Today I see caution saves people." Beth opened her mouth, closed it, then nodded, eyes wet. "I'm Beth," she said. "I'm grateful to the folks at the shop, and to the woman who funded us last year so we didn't have to cut safety. I didn't know that was her." I inhaled. A big word sat at the edge of my mouth. I chose not to swallow it and not to fire it like an arrow. I let it stand there and find its own way. "Caroline wanted legacy to have leg," I said. "If you want, we'll keep walking that road." Beth nodded. The nod was timid, but she stood straight. After the meeting, David saw people out. He handed me another set of papers. The Caroline Scholarship Fund. Bylaws for a scholarship supporting skilled trades and community building. I signed the initial trustee line and nominated Beth to the board with conflict safeguards. David smiled, tired. "Caroline thought farther ahead than all of us," he said. I thought of her evenings spent sharpening a pen to write a card longer than necessary to a kid receiving a grant. I heard her voice saying, "Don't rush, Tom." That night, the house felt like a photo washed pale. Emma lingered on the porch. She didn't say much. She just stared into the bottom of an empty cup. "I don't know who I am anymore," she whispered. I didn't try to spackle the hole with words. "If you want," I said, "tomorrow I'll go with you to the counselor David recommended. At first, the stipend will route directly per the agreement. You don't have to be good right away. Just go straight." Kyle didn't come by. He sent clipped texts threatening to sue. David said, "Let people who write letters talk to people who write letters. Courts love documents. Documents love seals." At first light, I carried Caroline's toolbox to the shop. The old handsaw's wooden grip had been polished by use. The steel still rang a thin ting when I tapped it with a nail. Beth met me at the door, her eyes like a strip of sunlight across the table saw. I set the box down. "This belongs where it will be used," I said. "Not locked in a cabinet." Everyone was quiet for a few seconds, then went back to work. I watched the steady rhythm. Measure, mark, cut, sand, join, drive the screws. Some languages need no words. The language of craft and kindness is one of them. We walked along Forsyth Park. Mist still clung to the grass. I told Beth how Caroline chose the kitchen paint, how she turned strangers into friends with one extra heartbeat of attention. Beth told me about her first rainy day on a job site, feeling like she stood in the middle of an orchestra. Each hammer a beat, each lift a note. "I don't know what love looks like," Beth said, "but I know a table leveled and steady is a kind of love." I laughed, listening to the wind in the trees. I didn't ask what she would call me. I let that word grow roots if it chose. Back home, I opened Caroline's letter again. There was a line I'd read but hadn't lived. Forgiveness isn't letting it slide, she wrote. Forgiveness is setting the truth on the table and stepping past it without stepping on anyone. I'm no poet. I know how to loosen a bolt and tighten it to spec. I called Emma. Honey, today I'll go with you, I said. We'll start by opening the door. On the other end, she barely breathed. Okay. By noon, David's email arrived. Kyle had received the no-contact notice. Emma had signed the stipend conditions. Any remaining disputes, he wrote, will go by law, not the internet. I nodded alone at the screen. Some victories are soundless. You hear them only as the soft ping of an incoming message. That evening, I stopped by the community build. Beth was teaching a kid to hold a ruler. It's not about measuring right, she said. It's about reading right. The child bent low, tongue peeking in concentration. I stood behind them without stepping into the frame. I thought Caroline would have loved this. She would make a loop, wipe a streak of dust from a door frame with a tissue, slip it into her pocket. She hated leaving smudges. Then she'd say, "Head home, Tom. Work tomorrow." And I'd say, "Right. Work tomorrow." On the way back, Savannah looked like a tabletop newly leveled. Scratches remained. They would need time, but the surface no longer sloped. Kyle might keep threatening from afar. The court would answer with calendars and seals. Emma might stumble at first. A counselor would pull up a chair, pour water, and set a tissue box on the table. Beth might drown in work at the shop, but I knew she'd be back on time. Schedules are a kind of discipline that knows how to be kind. I hung Caroline's brass compass on a wooden peg by the door. The needle still pointed north. Not because we knew where north was, but because it kept pointing there. Legacy, I thought, isn't a packet of papers with ownership at the top. Legacy is how you use a straight edge, how you log without dropping a period, how you say no without raising your voice. It's also a cedar box, a letter, and a charge. Use science. I touched the lid. The wood warmed under my hand. Caroline, I said into the empty room, I did what you asked. I heard a car murmur on the street, wind in the trees, the house breathing. I thought about tomorrow. No miracles, just hammers, nails, paper, seals, and people. People who lift their heads and walk straight. Weeks later, the Caroline Scholarship Fund awarded its first cohort in the trades. Emma sent me a photo. She stood outside the counselor's office, eyes swollen from crying, but her chin steady. I can do this, she wrote. Kyle went quiet after the warning letter and the court date. I don't need him to understand. I just need him to keep enough distance for things to mend. Beth sent over a new drawing, a small community kitchen corner where kids could make pencil boxes from leftover scraps. In the corner, a tiny caption, "For Caroline." I folded the drawing and slipped it into my pocket. I locked the door, checked the switches, and turned out the lights. The sky was bright with stars. I stood on the porch a while thinking about what had worn out and what was growing. I don't need to name every relationship anymore. I only want to see a young person recheck a pencil line, ease a sharp edge with a file, and ask the person beside them a decent question. You good? Maybe that's what the word enduring means. Inside, I set Caroline's small hammer on the table. I wrote a single line in the log. Verification phase complete. Construction phase begins. Then I closed the book and turned off the lamp. Outside, the compass needle still pointed north. In my chest, an old instruction came back into use without a single edit. Go straight. If you like the story, please like this video. Subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts on this story in the comments. To hear the next story, click on the box on the left.